Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to our weekly meeting of the Cary Rotary Club. Welcome to the friendliest club in District 7710. You're a fine-looking group today. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to ask Aiden Jones to come up and give our invocation. Lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. President, let us pray. Lord, as Rotarians, make us instruments of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let us love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Amen. Amen. Let's pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Thank you, Aiden. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to ask Bob Griffin to introduce our guest and visiting Rotarians. Bob.
Thank you, President Rod. Let me first, if I can, call on Paul Wozakevich to introduce his guest.
I just got for the second time, Ed Sheeran is here. He again showed up at our memory cafe last back. It's round two.
Welcome, Ed.
Welcome, Ed.
And Gail Cabrera, you've got a guest that you're seated with that I also know. I can tell by the look in your eyes that you weren't expecting to introduce Janine. You do it.
I guess you call it.
I'm following instructions, so I'm only got to follow the script.
So I am introducing Janine on. She is, I guess, actually Camille, and I'm just lucky enough to sit beside her today. You've been before on this, right? Yes.
So Janine is a prospective impact.
Yes.
member. So welcome, Janine.
Welcome, Janine.
And we have a visiting Rotarian, Stuart Schwartz. Will you stand and be recognized? Stuart is visiting us from the Palmerston North Club, New Zealand. Welcome. And then we take the opportunity to welcome you with a Cary Rotary banner that you can bring back to New Zealand and tell the tales
anymore. But then again, New Zealand is a very strange place. We don't have pennies, we don't have nickels, and we don't have checks. Everything is done electronically.
Way ahead of us.
This will have a special place in my office.
We are a very traditional club.
I think my father-in-law, Bob Rossi, was a member here many years ago. And I've been, I think the last time I was here was probably 3 or 4 years.
Last night
Ago.
What was the
Bob Rossi.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Bob Rossi.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I went and I met Stuart at the 55th reunion of the class of 67 at Broughton High School this weekend. His wife was one of my classmates, and they traveled here, among other things, to visit the classmates from Broughton High School. So, Stu, glad to have you with us today.
Thank you. Welcome,
Indeed.
Stu.
Welcome, Stu. Thank you.
It is indeed an honor to have you all with us. Thank you for being here, Ed and Janine and Stu. Thank you for attending. So we have a number of announcements here. First of all, I see a number of toothbrushes, toothpaste, reading glasses over here. Thank you, everyone, for your donations of that.
Sally, tell us about your trip. When do you leave?
I leave a week from this Thursday and come back the following Thursday. We're going to be at 9,000 feet of elevation way up in the back of beyond, a very small village. It's not a hammer and nails trip. We're going to be working with the schools and also seeing about getting safe water. We're told don't even try to brush your teeth with it. Do not, under any circumstances, get any water in your audio. It's all about bottled water and whatnot. But there has been a relationship with this village for several years now with the Cary Presbyterian Church, and I'm delighted to be going. It's going to be very interesting.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you all for your help.
Giving us the opportunity to support your project there. So I have to share, I got an email from Bill Zidek, our club member, Bill Zidek, and he mentioned that he and his wife Mario were traveling, and he sent me a couple of photographs that I wanted to pass along. He mentioned that, so they visited Paul Harris's home in Wallingford, Vermont. This is where Paul Harris spent his school days. For those guests who are with us, Paul Harris is the founder of Rotary. And so this is where Paul Harris spent his school days, and it's now the meeting place of the Rotary Club of Wallingford. And there's a little plaque here that he shared with me. So I just wanted to pass along Bill Zidek's regards and share the photos that he shared with me. That was kind of cool. Yeah, it was cool. Little Rotary moment there for everybody. Thank you, Bob. I also just want to remind everyone, speaking of travel, a couple weeks ago, Leon Abbas, our International Services Committee chair, mentioned that there was an opportunity to travel to the Dominican Republic to participate in the district's project there to build 3 houses. So I want to let you know we've had 2 people already sign up for that, Jim Lovejoy and Camille Hedrick. Will be going on that trip. So if there's anyone else interested in traveling to the DR in February, please speak with Leon Abbas and he'll give you more information about that. Great opportunity. Finally, it's getting very close. I want to remind everybody that the town of Cary is giving away 500 trees through the My Tree, Our Tree program. They're doing that on October 14th and 15th, so that's coming right up. There's an opportunity for us to volunteer as a Rotary Club, and I know folks already have signed up to help distribute those trees. These are not huge trees, they're like saplings, but so easy to manage. Please sign up. There's a sign up genius in your weekly email, and we'd love your support on that. Renee Spell, would you come up, please, and tell everyone about our Pints for Polio event?
Happy to, thank you. Thank you, President Rod. World Polio Day is October the 24th, and we are going to honor that by having a Pints for Polio event on the 25th, Tuesday night at the Cotton House beside the Make Inn on Academy Street. It'll be a $9 cover charge. Now, out of that, we're going to be able to vaccinate 3 children. It only takes $3 to vaccinate a child all the way through. So we are partnering with some other clubs in the Cary area, and you'll be getting some information via email in the next day or so. But when we put this on the Facebook page, we'd like for you to see it, like it, and share it, because then your friends see it as well. But we'll have food there, and there'll be a candy bar. So we're not taking care of your beer, but anyway. But we're going to be there and be able to hopefully enlighten some other people that might be around who don't know all that we do for polio. So there you go. Mark your calendars, and you'll see something else soon about that. Thank you.
Renee, thank you so much. And that's Tuesday, October 25th. It'll be from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Cotton House. And how many kids' lives do you want to save? That's our opportunity. Krista, would you come up, please, and tell us about the Junior Achievement activity in Ryla?
Yes. 2 very exciting events. So you'll see on your table, there's a couple of sign-up sheets going around. I think you all heard Camille talk about the Junior Achievement event we have in December. There's a training session in November, but if you do not like Sign Up Genius or you just haven't noticed it come in your inbox, feel free to put your name down and I will get you signed up, get some information to you. So that's going around on the tables. There's 3 sheets. So if you haven't seen one, come see me after. I'll have them at the end. Just messed it up. So that is that. The second thing is RYLA. Bill Fletcher has already shared some information about RYLA. I have the applications right here. So RYLA is Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. It's a weekend event that happens, and it's specifically for juniors, so high school juniors. And when they apply for college, there's a section on their application that says, what awards have you received during your high school years? If they went to RYLA, they've received one because it's Rotary Youth Leadership Awards. So it's a great motivator for students to get involved. But once they get there, it's a wonderful weekend where they get to experience leadership, teamwork, and get to know a lot of the other students in the community. So if you have a junior in your life, let me know and I will hand you an application. They're due back to me by December 2nd. That's also written on the top. So if you forget, it's right there. I think that's it. Good. Thank you.
Thank you for your work, and thank you so much for our Youth Services Committee, who's doing a fantastic job with our projects on literacy and education. With that, are there any, our Sergeant Arms is not with us today, but I'd like to invite if there are any miracle moments to share. Miracle moments. Gail.
So this is not my miracle moment, but in true Darren fashion, he has a miracle moment he would like me to share, even though he is online. So this is from Darren. Darren lost power for 24 hours, but he now has power again. And so that is great. But he has also sent me some pictures. There's a tree that Darren built that tree house, like the legitimate tree house, like the pink tree. There's a tree that actually fell, but away from the tree house. So that's also a miracle moment that it didn't fall towards the tree house.
Great, thank you, Gail. Thank you. Darren's giving you the thumbs up here, so you did a good job with that. Thank you. Any other miracle moments?
Rod.
Yes, Bill.
I kind of jumped the gun on the class reunion Friday night. So there's the payment for the miracle moment.
Thank you.
We had 85 or so members of our class present. We had a huge class with over 700 kids. So last year, the year before, Sanderson High School opened. So we had 2 high schools worth of kids at Broughton High School that year. And great class. It was good to see folks, and a lot of folks who I could not recognize, and thank God they had name tags on.
Congratulations, Bill. Thank you. Any other miracle moments?
Bill, you haven't changed at all, right?
I will share a miracle moment. Speaking of the storm, my miracle moment is that I'm still alive, because I actually had a meeting out of town. I had to fly to California early Friday morning, and so missed all the rain, missed all the wind. It was perfectly dry and sunny in California. It's a miracle that I'm still alive. So it's good to see you all. Send my dollar. All right. With that, we are delighted to have Evelyn Contre as our speaker today. I'd like to invite Charlie Konigsberg to come up and introduce us.
Thanks, Rod. Just one quick word, if I may, about an additional word about polio. I really recommend to you the current Rotarian magazine, the feature article on polio. And I don't think I have ever seen a better write-up on the difference between the wild polio virus versus the vaccine variants, which is what's troubling right now. I don't take time from the speaker to go into it, but I was just impressed with the clarity and professionalism of the write-up. I really do recommend it. With that, let me introduce Evelyn Contre. She is the Chief Administrative Officer and Communications Officer for the North Carolina Medical Board. She's been here before. I think she and I have agreed that did occur at one point several years ago. And she has reached out, and one of the things I'm impressed with this board is that they do reach out. I've worked in several states dealing with licensing boards, medical licensing boards. You don't see that very often. I think that's really important. She is involved with the various business and administrative functions, as well as the licensing and strategic planning for the medical board's internal and external communications. She's got 25 years of experience, professional experience. She knows a lot about communications strategy, sustainability consultant, corporate social responsibility, project management, and community outreach. She graduated with honors from North Carolina State University. We have people who graduated from several institutions of higher learning around here. So, that includes North Carolina State. Earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in mathematics. She holds a Master of Business Administration from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She lives in Raleigh with her husband and 2 daughters. So, Evelyn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for such a warm welcome. It is so wonderful to be back here. I remember that this is the friendliest Rotary Club. I've been to a few Rotary Clubs, and so I will endorse that. I thought I was going to hear some booing in the crowd from a mixed educational background from NC State and UNC. So do I need to give a shout out for any Duke fans out there? Make you feel inclusive. Included.
Wake Forest is over there.
Okay, as long as you don't mention Clemson, then we're all good. That's all I'm saying. So thank you so much for a warm introduction. I've been with the medical board for 7 years, and I just wanted to come back and talk to you a little bit about what we do. There's a difference between the medical board, which regulates, licenses and regulates physicians and physician assistants on behalf of the state of North Carolina, versus the medical society, which is kind of like a trade organization for physicians and physician assistants. Thank you for putting that up there. If you could go ahead and advance a couple of slides. We're going to have to just keep up with each other because I get going on a roll and who knows where I am. Oh, right. I have control.
You may, if you'd like it.
I do like control. I think you told me to have to do some.
See, you were on my witness, John. I followed my witness. Test it even before. I'll try.
Okay. Thanks. Okay. And so we're going to talk about a few of these things. I'm going to try to make this as interesting as possible. Those of you who love data, I've got a little bit of data. Those of you who love pictures, I've got a few pictures. So hopefully there's a little bit of for everyone. So we'll talk about our mission and responsibilities first, and we'll run through the rest of that as we go. So next slide, please. So the medical board was established in 1859 by the General Assembly for the benefit and protection of the people of North Carolina. Our mission statement, as you see here on the screen, is really about protecting the people of North Carolina and the integrity of the medical profession. So the idea here is that we want you to be seeing the best and the brightest. We want to make sure we keep the scoundrels out. And we're making sure that if there is an issue that goes wrong, in all seriousness, that there is some sort of accountability, and that's our role, licensing and regulation. Our vision statement is to be a proactive and progressive leader, and that we're keeping up with the times. As we've all learned in the last few years, science changes quickly, medicine changes quickly, and so it's up to us as the regulatory body to make sure that we are keeping up with the times. Next slide, please. The medical board is a state agency, but we're not part of government. We don't receive taxpayer dollars. We're completely self-funded. We enforce the laws of the state through what's called the Medical Practice Act. This does not govern how medicine is practiced. It's just if there's a standard of care that's established in the field, we're enforcing it. So we're not telling doctors how to practice, but we're there in case something goes wrong. So we have about 57,000 licensees, many of whom practice in our state, and I'll get into who we license in just a minute. We have 13 board members that are not part of the staff. So they're appointed mostly by the governor. We have three public members, and they're appointed as well. There's a process. And we have 64 professional staff, mostly in Raleigh, but stationed throughout the state. Next slide. And here's a picture. This is our pandemic picture. Since we couldn't gather together for so long to get our, what I call the class photo, we captured these through screenshots. We were able to hold our meetings virtually, just like you were. So this is an image here. We have physicians, PAs, nurse practitioners, and public members on our board. We tried to capture these board members are appointed by a review panel, not to get into too many details, but they represent the state. They come from all parts of the state. They have represent all types of specialties. You see, we've got a good mix of diversity. And so they come together 6 times a year to review cases and licenses, and that's where the magic happens. Next slide. All right, so now we're going to go into the next portion of our presentation, an overview of what we do. So we have 3 primary responsibilities: licensing, regulation, which is another term for discipline, and policy development. So with licensing, we're really looking at the 2 C's, character and competence. So we want to make sure that if someone who's applying to practice medicine in our state, that they get a license through us, and that we can ensure that they've met the minimum requirements for training and education. For regulation, for discipline, this protects the public by intervening if there's an issue, whether it's unprofessional conduct or just poor practice. And then for policy development, as I said earlier, we don't set the standard of care, but we have guidelines that we issue that might provide guidance or direction on things that could be very tricky, like photography in the exam room. You may not want to think about that. Sometimes you need photography, especially if it's an ER visit or if you're going to, having some sort of plastic surgery. But there are other times when you don't want photography in the exam room, and I'm sure you can imagine those scenarios. How to handle medical records. What does the medical board expect when you're documenting the care of the patient? Or even the physician-patient relationship, which really dictates a lot. You can't just be dismissed arbitrarily from a practice. There are certain rules that they have to follow before a patient can be terminated. Things like that. Next. So as I mentioned, we license about 57,000 physicians, PAs, and a handful of other medical professionals, anesthesiology assistants, residents, licensed perfusionists, sleep techs, that sort of thing. We have about 40,000 physicians that work in the state of North Carolina, and we have about 9,000 PAs that work in the state. The others have a license here but work elsewhere. We issue about 5,000 licenses a year. North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states in the nation, and our medical population is also quickly growing. The PA population has increased by about 7% per year, which is that's a high growth rate, whereas physicians, a much larger body, are only growing at about 1.5 or 2%. Next slide. As far as discipline and regulation goes, we receive complaints from the public. It is our primary source of information when something goes wrong. We receive we open about 2,500 enforcement cases per year. And about 1,500 of those cases come from patients, family members, and other members of the public. And it's really a critical role for how we can do our work. If we don't receive the information, we're not out monitoring the 50,000, 57,000 people. We have to receive this information. So it can come in from a family member or a patient. It could come in from a pharmacist. It could come in from a peer or an employer. There are a lot of different ways that it can come in. Different agencies, law enforcement, et cetera. And that's really the critical function that we are a place to hold someone accountable when something has gone wrong. So one thing I wanted to mention is, I talked about filing a complaint. You can, filing a complaint means that you're telling the medical board that there's been an issue. We can hold a licensee accountable for poor conduct, or poor medical care. It helps us protect patients against future instances. So it's not going to influence how a medical provider treated you. It's not going to change how they're managing your care or to help you win money from a lawsuit, or sometimes even get you an apology. But what it will do is it will help us address the problem so that it doesn't happen again. And if you go to the next slide, we have some of the do file. If you believe your medical care was negligent or below acceptable standards, if you believe the conduct is unethical or unprofessional, unfortunately, these circumstances do happen. If you believe that, if you want to prevent this from happening to other patients. What we don't do is to handle billing disputes, or, if a doctor was mean to you. These are not the issues that's best handled at the practice level. Next slide, please. And then tips for submitting a complaint. I always tell people, just remember a human is reading this. So if you write a novel, it's going to be hard to sift through it. We have an online complaint tutorial. You can see here some details that you would need to provide. Anything that would help us to open an investigation, gathering electronic files if you have them. And then we always tell people, make sure you just write it out beforehand so that you don't lose anything on the electronic submission. We have two primary functions on our website: filing a complaint and look up a doctor or PA. The look up a doctor function allows you to see the profile for anybody who is licensed to our board. The filing a complaint one, this is where you would go, and it will take you through a series of screens to complete that function. Go ahead. Once a complaint comes in, it goes through a series of reviews. So it's reviewed by the staff to determine what route it needs to go. It can be investigated, requesting records, interviewing witnesses, just doing general investigative processes. The staff reviews this, makes a recommendation, and then it goes to the board for deliberation and vote. And then all along the way, the doctor or the PA and the patient who complains in this scenario are notified with the progress. And if you're interested in learning more, we've got a tutorial on the website. Next slide. There are three primary outcomes from a case: public action, private action, and no formal action. Most of our cases are resolved with no formal action. Many of those are because there was no violation of the law. An example of this might be, my doctor was rude to me and I'd like to file a complaint and have their license revoked. A private action is really, the law may not have been violated, but we have concerns about the behavior or the care that was received. So we're going to write you a letter that says, we did not like this. We want you to change your practice. We want you to do a better job of documenting issues with the patient. We want you to take training on a particular topic. And that's about 20% of the case resolutions. And then the 10% public actions are about 10%. And this is when we feel it's necessary to notify the public. And it could be a range of actions. It could be a public warning letter all the way up to suspension. So only about 3% of the entire population of doctors and PAs have ever had a public action, so it is pretty rare. And that should let you know the severity of that issue. If we felt it was important enough to notify the public, then it's something worth reading. And you can go to the website and look up your doctor and look at their profile to see if there are any public actions available. Why am I spending so much time talking to you about this? Not because I think that maybe you need to know as a patient who has had a bad interaction, but maybe you have question marks in your head about that last visit, or maybe you have a friend who had question marks in their head. We want for everyone to know what they can do, what are their options, what's available to them. Years ago, we did a public survey to find out what our awareness is in the community. So how aware are people of our existence? And it was a paltry 11%. So I look at that and say, there's nowhere to go but up. It cannot get worse than 11%. And this is why we want to come out and empower you to be an educated patient. There are a variety of things that could go wrong. I would guess that 90% of the time things go right. And that's great. That's the way that it should be. But for that portion of time where there's something that goes wrong, whether it's a misdiagnosis, miscommunication, something that caused patient harm, that's really what we're interested in. All right, let's see what's on the next slide. There we go. So how else do we serve the public? We're going to talk about the look up a doctor function. So this is the state's most comprehensive online database. It will have education, where are they working currently. It has a whole host of information, certifications, if they want to include any awards in there. And as I mentioned earlier, if there are any criminal convictions, if there are malpractice cases over a certain dollar figure, disciplinary actions, you'll find it all on that look up a doctor function. Okay, so the last portion of my presentation is about telemedicine. Before we move forward, how many of you before the pandemic had ever seen a doctor or PA or PT or anything through telemedicine? A video, a phone call before the pandemic? Well, you guys are beating the odds. How many of you since the pandemic have had a telemedicine visit of some sort? Okay, well, y'all are, yeah. So that obviously there are wonderful benefits of having telemedicine. If you could go to the next slide, that was my little, that was the wake you up. Okay, so just a little bit about telemedicine. It's any sort of electronic communication. I dare say texting as telemedicine. I don't want to hear that you've been getting medical advice by text, but I have heard that it happens. Wonderful efficiency, gives great access if you live in a rural area to a specialist. There are all kinds of types of telemedicine. It could be with your primary care provider, which personally, I love that because there's a place for you to go if you need to see somebody in person. You could consult a specialist. It could be with a telemedicine vendor, like a Teladoc, or I think they've got a whole bunch of them now. Consultation between providers, remote imaging, so your last x-rays might not have even been reviewed in our state. It could have been out in California, it could have been in another country. Remote monitoring of vitals, so on and so forth. So there are a lot of different ways that telemedicine has entered into the practice of medicine, and only recently has it really exploded with the patient-facing portion. Next slide, please. Acute care, chronic care, specialty care, behavioral health, that's a really important one. And I like to differentiate between telemedicine being provided by your doctor or your PA that's in a building, that's in your town, versus telemedicine that they've never seen you before, and every time you call up, you see someone different. There's a huge difference between those types of care. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So, the medical board has a telemedicine policy statement. And basically what it says is you need to be able to receive the same level of care in person or via telemedicine. We're not lowering our standards. So that creates some sort of limitation for telemedicine. They still have to take a patient history. They need to know what medications you're on. They need to know everything about you that someone who's face-to-face would gather. They can evaluate patients. They need to evaluate a patient before giving a diagnosis or treatment, and then offering consultation only for the ailments that can be acutely diagnosed and treated remotely. So let me give you a little example of this. My husband had terrible back pain, injured himself running, And so bad that he had a hard time getting into a car. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that level of back pain, but he could not get into a car. And so I was like, you need to call your doctor and ask if they do telemedicine. Well, didn't completely take my advice, but he did find a local urgent care that had telemedicine, got him in for a visit, and the doctor said, and he wanted whatever the medication was that he used, muscle relaxant or whatever that he used to be on. And the doctor said, you really need to be evaluated. Somebody needs to get their hands on you, and really, they need to do some imaging. I cannot prescribe to you until you come into the office, and we need to see you. By the way, we can get you in this afternoon. That is she did exactly what I would hope she would do, which is, I can't effectively diagnose you, and I can't prescribe for you until I can diagnose you, and the only way I can really diagnose you is to see you. So we did get that worked out. He was able to get in that afternoon, and he ended up getting the prescription that he needed. But that's not always what happens. And if you're working with a telemedicine service that they don't know you, this is the first time they've ever seen you, they don't have your history in a meaningful way other than maybe what you filled out online, they can't say, why don't you run down to our office? We've got an appointment this afternoon. We'll get you in. Right. So there are some limitations. It's not terrible, but there are some limitations. Okay. So it's difficult to complete an effective physical exam through a computer. They have not quite figured out how to allow the hands to come out. They can't conduct tests, collect blood work. Just think about all the things. They can't take your weight. They can't measure your height. I guess I'm thinking about my children. I've been on a telemedicine visit where we had to actually switch devices because I couldn't get it on my computer, so I had to do it on my phone. Had a poor internet connection, poor video quality, so that's a limitation. As the patient, if you're not going to your primary care provider, you have to request, it is on you to request that your medical records get sent. That's my understanding of this. Telemedicine, when you are using a service where you're not seeing the same doctor every time, is no substitute for preventative care. Can't say that enough. And it's not a substitute for your primary care provider. So we have circumstances where people keep going back to telemedicine visits for the same acute issue over and over and over again. It's like, enough. You need to see somebody who can care for you and not just give you a little Band-Aid. I put some asterisks on here because if your primary care physician or PA or nurse practitioner for that matter offers telemedicine, then that's different. It's kind of like that. It's just an extension of their office. So, during the pandemic, telemedicine obviously was undeniably helpful. It helped people maintain their chronic conditions. They were able, I did a survey of licensees, doctors and PAs before the pandemic. This was in 2018. I should have bought a lottery ticket if I'd known how this would be. We asked them, how many of you have ever delivered care through telemedicine? 85%, not only had they not delivered it, weren't even considered. So think about how that has switched.
Was there a government limitation? Were there regulations limiting that?
In very unique ways. So part of it was the insurance companies would not reimburse at the same rate as an in-person visit, which during the pandemic they changed. We'll see how long that lasts, but that's a question for your Blue Cross presenter. The DEA would not allow prescribing of controlled substances through telemedicine except with established patients. So that changed. I would predict that they're going to go back to that at some point, but we have no idea. But from the medical board's perspective, no, there was no change. I could have just said no. Yes, the last bullet, far greater prescribing of authority through telemedicine during the pandemic. And tips for an effective telemedicine visit. I need to remember to tell you something during the red flags. For those of you who have not been indoctrinated into the world of telemedicine, you need to keep your visit to a specific issue. When you go in, you can't just tell them, well, my knee hurts, and my toe hurts, and my finger hurts, and my hair hurts. And you need to be very specific, because otherwise they only have 15 minutes or maybe longer if it's your regular provider. And this allows them to really focus on what's ailing you. Why are you there? Make notes in advance to help keep you on track, because it's a little different than being in person where you have that conversation, you have the relationship, or if it's, even at an urgent care, it's a little different being virtual. Set up in a quiet space, know your pharmacy details. So what pharmacy do you use, so on and so forth. And then you need to make sure that you have whatever history that your provider will need. So those are tips. Yes, sir. Perfect. The don'ts. Don't insist on a specific course of treatment. Nobody likes that. Don't use telemedicine as a second opinion because you didn't like what your doctor said. I already said the next bullet. If you keep having the same issue over and over again, maybe telemedicine is not really solving your problem. And don't expect to be treated for a condition that they're not trained to care for. And the note that I wanted to, we'll go to the red flags and then I'll wrap it up. So telemedicine is great as long as you know how to use it, right? But there's a lot of fraud. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, there were a lot of fraudsters out there who were prescribing equipment or sometimes medicines or for things that they didn't need, they didn't want, and they were told that their insurance would pay for them and it would be free. There was just, there were not enough guardrails to make sure that didn't happen. So here are some things that you should be aware of. If they do not ask you for your identification, or they don't tell you who they are and what their license type is, or if they offer a prescription or some sort of treatment without an evaluation, or they insist on using a specific pharmacy. This should be very similar to your regular visits where you don't have to worry about all these. And then that last bullet, they offer items, supplies, or testing unrelated to your condition. So just keep, just like anything else, you just got to keep your eyes open. And then here's the list of common telemedicine visits during the pandemic. This was from 2020. You can imagine where some of those came from. All right, I think that's it. And my contact information is there, and then my communications director is Jean Fisher-Brinkley. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I live in Templeton, which is the new CCRC. There are people moving from all over the states. They are having a terrible time finding physicians. Do you think there's a real shortage of physicians in the triangle?
One of the slides I took out to meet the 30 minutes was the distribution of physicians and PAs in our state. There are pockets, rural areas are hit the hardest.
Yeah,
but where did you say that you live?
Here,
right here.
In Cary.
across the street.
At the Templeton CCRC.
I'm not aware of a shortage in the area. I mean, that was one of the darkest blue.
Yeah, I see the offices everywhere, but apparently they're having a hard time.
Evelyn, our table has a high stakes bet on what this is.
Oh. Well, I had to look at that several times and ask, what is it? It's a door opener. So you use one side to hook on one of those little lever doors.
Okay.
And then the other one will help you pull open. There's a little knob to help you pull.
Thank you.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
welcome.
Well, somebody won that bet. Not me. I think we're naked surprised.
Yes. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
As a token of our appreciation, I'd like to offer you a box of note cards from Jerry Miller, our resident artist over there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's very.
Thank you.
Evelyn, thank you so much for the important work that you do. And I have to say thank you for the swag. We appreciate the gifts you've left for us here. Thank you very much for that. Also, Charlie, thank you for arranging for Evelyn to come speak with us. As we move towards closing here, there are some birthdays this week. So please wish Gary Chabra a happy birthday on October 5th. That's tomorrow. Also, Ellen Poisson, her birthday is on the 8th. We have some member anniversaries. Paul Wazelkavich on the 10th celebrates 5 years in our club. Yay, Paul, thank you. Thank you very much. Good stuff. Wedding anniversaries. Okay, y'all pay attention here. October 9th, Kristen and Preston Sutton celebrate 29 years of marriage. On the same day, October 9th, Brian and Cheryl Reed celebrate 29 years of marriage. So apparently it's a requirement of employment at Town Bank to be married on October 9th. So congratulations. Next week's program is Lisa Arment Cummings. She's at Wake Early College of Health and Science. Should be very interesting. Next week's meal is meatloaf with mashed potatoes, gravy, and green beans. Don't miss that. And the program in 2 weeks, I have not listed here, so you'll find out. I want to thank our speaker again. Evelyn, thank you for being here with us today. And again, thank you for the work that you do. Ed and Janine and Stu, thank you all so much for joining us today. It's great to have you here. I want to thank, as always, the club members who help support this meeting, who sign up. And I want to remind everybody that every couple weeks or so, Kristen sends out a link to Sign Up Genius to where you too can volunteer to lead a part of our club activities. But today I'd like to thank Aiden. I'd like to thank Bob, as always, Charlie for introducing our speaker, Paul, and Tim, who's going to lead us out in the four-way test. Tim.
Of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill, better friendship? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
You're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.